So I wanted to take this opportunity with the Shikshamana training course to reflect on an aspect of training and monastic life, a place where I think I've learned a lot and possibly grown and changed, and that's the rock tumbler. And I certainly had heard a lot about the rock tumbler from BBCs or mentioned when I was a guest, but I wasn't really in the rock tumbler until I moved here in 2020. And I was able to figure out pretty quickly that something was wrong with the rock tumbler. And I don't know how much you remember from the time when I first got here, if you could also judge that maybe something was a little bit wrong with this one in the rock tumbler. And, initially I had a lot of excuses that I was coming from COVID isolation. I had been on my own for months, not really interacting with people. You all had been just in the rock tumbler with yourselves for a few months without guests or visitors. I came from a family where we had a lot of conflict avoidance. We didn't really fight. We didn't really make a big deal with others. I had been used to living on my own for 7 years, and I'm an only child. So I had all of these reasons for why maybe I couldn't figure out the rock tumbler. From the outside view, you possibly looked at what was going on in my first few months here and early on as an anagarika, and it's like, well, she's really anxious. She's a bit of a perfectionist. She had some issues with the 8 worldly concerns, especially that aversion to criticism and attachment to good reputation. And that's all quite true. But from the inside, I was trying to understand what was going on, and it was just one big mess. And I saw that, well, this just isn't quite working. And one day, I finally saw an image that kind of worked for me as kind of an internal articulation to myself of how I was viewing myself in this rock tumbler. I was not a rock with sharp edges bouncing into one another. I was a glass marble. I had no sharp edges whatsoever, and every time I hit one of these rocks, I in fact got dinged up and was getting less polished. And eventually, possibly, I was going to hit a rock in a way that was going to crack me altogether. So once I saw this, and this really captured quite well my internal understanding of the feelings I was having about the rock tumbler, I at least now can analyze it. And this was a really important step for me getting out of kind of that initial stage of just being confused and really afflicted around the rock tumbler. So am I really a glass marble surrounded by rocks in the rock tumbler? Am I really that special? Well, in general, the answer to that is always no. That's easy enough. And am I really without any sharp edges? Am I really without any faults? And I could certainly think of situations in my prior job or in grad school where I had conflict with others and would yell at others and act in ways that I was not so proud of. And probably some of you remember me being an anagarika and having some conflict with you. So I certainly was not a glass marble with no sharp edges whatsoever. And then if I'm thinking that, okay, every time I'm having some conflict with someone, I'm in fact becoming less polished and getting just damaged, really? Am I completely incapable of dealing with conflict? And again, that's, in our offering service prayer, we say, differences in ideas and ways of doing things may arise. We don't need to make them into conflict. And so that aspect that I was seeing things as conflict that I maybe didn't need to see as conflict, and that really, why did I think I couldn't handle this? Again, everyone else is handling it, and we talk about it explicitly as part of our training. So then the third of this notion that, eventually this is going to break me completely, well, if I think about it this way, if I'm thinking about myself in this situation in this way, is it leading me to be happy? No. And is it helping me grow? No. So once I had this image in my mind and saw some faults with it, I was able to reframe it to myself. So, am I some sort of special glass marble where everyone else is a bit of a rock? No, I'm an ordinary sentient being, as at least some of you might be too. And so, of course, I'm going to have some faults. That's okay. We work on them here. That's like the point. And am I really incapable? Is it not possible for me to deal with differences in ideas with others? Me being afflicted, others being afflicted? Well, I can practice the Dharma. Again, that's why I'm here. Maybe this isn't something I learned to do as a child, but it's something I can learn to do here and practice. And along with that is learning nonviolent communication, NVC. So even if I don't yet have ways to express myself when I'm feeling afflicted or when I've had some difficult interaction with someone else, I can learn how to do that. Again, practice it. And then finally that notion of, oh, this is going to break me completely. Well, I'm here to transform, and I'm here to grow. I need to learn how to do something different. And so that kind of pushed me to say, okay, I need to find a way to just work with this differently, even if this is not a situation that I've ever figured out how to get out of in the past, staying intact and being pleased with myself and finding a way to move forward. I can do that for the first time here. Instead of having conflict with someone and saying, well, okay, I'm just never going to talk to them again. That's my solution. Well, that's not going to be the solution here. Let me find a new way to actually deal with this. Let me change, transform, and grow. That's what I signed up to do. So with this, I was able to relax a little bit. And in particular, those sharp edges that, I knew I had, I think they'd kind of just been turned inwards to try to keep the outside as smooth as possible. And so I could kind of just relax, and instead of contorting myself to keep those sharp bits on the inside, yes, okay, they're a little more on the outside now. And possibly you've noticed that. Perhaps you saw that there was a bit of a shift in some of our interactions, but I think in many ways it's been beneficial in that now I can actually work on those sharp edges rather than just cutting myself and pretending that they're not there. So there was one final step that I needed to get through into getting to where I am now. And I don't even remember the context. I believe it was after some conflict, talking to my mentor, and I said something about still trying to, kind of figure out the right way to navigate this rock tumbler, the goal of the rock tumbler being to get polished. And my mentor said to me, no, that's not the goal, it just happens. And seeing that there was this aspect that I still was trying to have some control of the rock tumbler, that I still thought, okay, well, let me see where my sharp edges are and then hit them against the other rocks in exactly the right way to still try to keep some control of this process. So I've reflected on that, and I think I've let go of at least a portion of that control. And again, I can see that I can relax a little bit more. Yes, sometimes I bump up against some of you, but then we can talk about it. We can recover. We can be fine. It's not the end of the world. So with this, I think I'm growing. I think I'm transforming. And I rejoice that I didn't hang on to what that initial approach was, because I certainly think I would have broken by now. So for those of you who are in training or dealing with struggles in the rock tumbler in your own ways, I promise that it is beneficial, but one has to maybe have an accurate view of themselves and their rock tumbler first.